Hi everyone, and welcome to the second part of Copyright 101. Thanks for joining me again for another pre-recorded lecture. In the first class, we discussed the history, concept, and purpose of copyright law in the US, as well as explained the difference between the publishing side of copyright and the recorded and master side of copyright. For these second and third classes, we'll be focusing mostly on the music publishing side, which is the song side of copyright. First, I want to cover the main types of music publishing income, which are mechanical, performance, synchronization, and print. First, let's talk about mechanical licensing. So, a brief history. The reason it's called mechanical licensing is because it originated with player piano rolls in the early 1900s. Publishers of songs wanted to profit from the piano rolls being sold by manufacturers at the time, so mechanical licenses were arranged so that the piano roll manufacturers would pay a certain percentage of each sale to the music publishers for use of their songs. Today, the current statutory mechanical royalty rate for physical recordings, such as CDs and albums, and permanent digital downloads is 9.1 cents for recordings of a song 5 minutes or less, and 1.75 cents per minute or fraction thereof for those over 5 minutes. If a composition has already been previously recorded and released to the general public, and someone wishes to record and distribute that composition, and they're not the original songwriter, they have to obtain what's called a compulsory mechanical license. In general, someone doesn't need permission from the copyright owner, but they do need to file that mechanical license so that the original copyright owner gets paid. There are some exceptions. However, the most common way to file a mechanical license is to either go through the Harry Fox Agency, which is a liaison between the publishers and the record companies, or to request a mechanical license directly through the music publisher. Some music publishers license everything through Harry Fox, some only go direct, and others have a combination thereof. Performance income is collected by performing rights societies, PROs for short, such as BMI, ASCAP, SESAC, and GMR. The writer will affiliate with the PRO of his choice, and songs will be registered with the PROs online or via CWR. The PRO typically, with some exceptions, pays out the songwriter share of performance income directly to the songwriter. So what type of income do the PROs collect? Like, what is performance income? Well, it includes radio, including streaming services, television, including cable, concert and club venues, retail, restaurants and bars, airlines, hotels. And it does not cover theater or grand rights. That's actually covered by sync licensing, which we'll cover in a little bit. A public performance of music is defined in U.S. copyright law to include any music played outside of a normal circle of friends and family that occurs in any public place. A public performance also occurs when music is transmitted to the public via radio, TV broadcasts, digital service providers, and any other means. Songwriters, composers, and music publishers have the exclusive right to play their music publicly and to authorize others to do so under copyright law. When it comes to digital streaming royalties, interactive services like Spotify has performance and mechanicals collected, but non-interactive like Pandora receives performance only. As we discussed earlier, digital purchases or downloads are subject to mechanical licensing, as that would be a straight-ahead purchase. Another source of income for music publishers is print licensing. As the name suggests, it's for use of lyrics in books and novels, printing of sheet music and folios, and depending upon the songwriter's agreement with the publisher, the use may or may not require permission beforehand from the songwriter. Most major music publishers have outside agencies like Hal Leonard to handle their print licensing for them. It's rarely done in-house nowadays by the music publisher. Synchronization licensing, or sync licensing for short, is when songs are used in another medium, such as film and TV, usually audiovisual. So if you'll remember in our first class, we talked about the two different sides of copyright, the song music publishing side and the master side. The person requesting the sync license will need to get approval from both the song copyright holder, who's usually the music publisher, and the master rights holder, who's usually the record company. Both rights holders will issue their own quote and do their own licensing. However, it's typical for a publisher to go what's called MFN, or most favored nations, with the record company as well as any other publishers on the song. And what that means is that if another rights holder quotes a higher fee, the music publisher will also get that fee. It's a way to protect the music publisher and ensure that they'll receive as high a fee as any of the other rights holders on the song. When a songwriter gets to a certain point in their career, they don't want to spend all their time trying to collect all these various types of income, so they enter into a publishing agreement with a music publisher. There are several types of agreements, and we'll focus on the most common ones: administration, co-publishing, joint venture, and work for hire. An administration agreement is an agreement in which the songwriter owns their own publishing, but the publishing company administers and collects the income on the songwriter's behalf, usually charging an administration fee anywhere from 10 to 25%. The typical term is anywhere from 3 to 7 years. The songwriter's performance income is collected directly by his PRO and paid directly to the songwriter. In a co-publishing agreement, similar to an administration agreement, the publisher will collect and administer on behalf of the songwriter and pay them their income. However, in a co-publishing agreement, the publisher will usually own 50% of the publishing share. The length of the agreement is typically about 2 years, usually with a series of renewal options to extend the agreement. Oftentimes, the publisher will retain the songs delivered under the agreement for life of copyright, unlike an administration agreement in which the publisher will no longer have an interest upon termination of the deal. A joint venture agreement is an agreement in which a publisher enters into a deal with another publisher who has entered into deals with songwriters. This sort of deal is usually advantageous to smaller publishers who still want to own a share but don't want to do all the administration duties. So they enter into an agreement with a larger publisher who will handle all of that for them. The larger publisher will then usually own and collect a share as well. A work for hire is usually when a songwriter is hired on commission to compose a song for film or for a television show for a one-time fee. The author does not usually have copyright ownership in a work for hire, but the publishing company owned by the film company has the complete ownership and is considered essentially the author. There's a different copyright duration too for works for hire than for other songs. As we discussed in our first class, the usual copyright duration is 70 years plus life of author. But for works for hire, it's 95 years from the date of publication or 120 years from the date of creation. With the exception of ASCAP, which goes by the 100% scale, U.S. publishers and societies typically use the 200% scale, 100% to publisher and 100% to writer, and I've included a sample of song splits. I want to go over filing copyright registrations with the Copyright Office. If you were to file a copyright registration for the song side, that would be called a PA form. If you were filing a copyright registration to protect the recording, that's called an SR. And you can register either a published or unpublished work. Published simply means that the work is made available for public consumption, released on a CD or digital download for purchase. But you can also copyright something unpublished. Either way, you do need to provide a deposit copy, which means a recording of a song. And nowadays, copyright certificates are mostly submitted online with digital MP3 recordings, but I believe you can still mail in the old-fashioned copyright form with a CD. And although technically something is considered a copyright once it's fixed in a tangible format, it's still advisable to file a copyright certificate since that constitutes a public record of that copyright. In case that there was ever an infringement of the song, the plaintiff would need to produce a copyright certificate in court. So it's really highly recommended to still file a copyright with the Copyright Office. The third and final course of our Copyright 101 classes will review U.S. statutory reversions and notices of termination, the Music Modernization Act and the MLC, and the 4 factors of fair use. Thanks so much for joining, and I'll see you next week.